Meeting to order. This is the Snow School Roof Building Committee and the Farm Hill School Roof Building Committee. Our first item of business on tonight's agenda is approval of the minutes from the March 23rd, 2021 meeting. So we need a motion.
So move for approval, Vinnie Lafredo.
I'll second. Tony Gennaro.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair.
Yep.
I do believe someone needs to serve as secretary for this evening's meeting. I don't know if Marco would do that or someone, because Chris Bourne had done it for the prior meeting. She's not on.
Yes, Marco, is that something you can do, or what are our options?
I'll try to unmute this time. Yeah, I will. I'll
Sure.
keep notes of that between myself and the recording Cody. We'll put together some good minutes.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
All right, so
Councilman.
we have a motion by Councilman Lafredo and seconded by Councilman Gennaro. Any other discussion on the minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All right, passes unanimously. We will move on to approval of the minutes of the March 25th, 2021 meeting. So we need a motion for this one.
So move approval, Madam Chair.
Second as well, Councilman Gennaro.
Okay, all right, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. That
Madam
one
Chair,
passes.
if I might, then we subsequently had, of course, the interviews on April 6th. So those minutes are not yet in our possession. And that's at that meeting where we had the interviews and then we decided who we were going to hire. But so I assume we have minutes shortly coming. I don't know if Marco or anybody, if Chris, I think, was taking those minutes as well. I just want to note for the record that we have yet to, so we need to, at a subsequent meeting, we should have those in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check with Christine Bourne tomorrow.
Okay.
I know she's going to pop on for a few minutes of this meeting, but I'll check with her on those minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will move on to item 3, which is an update on financing. I know Chris Bourne is probably, I thought she would be here to discuss this with us, but I know the council members on this committee have maybe a little more information, but I wanted to bring everybody up to speed on what's happening with financing. So Marco, is that something you want to jump in on, or should we wait for Christine?
We should wait for Christine.
Okay. All right, so if it's all right with the committee, we can, jump to the presentation and then we'll circle back to financing if everybody's okay with that. Yeah, sound good? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the presentation of estimated costs and concerns from Silver Petrocelli. So Paul, we will go to you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Oh, great. So it's great to be with you this evening. We have been busy moving forward with the beginning of the project. We've been out to the site. We've reviewed the existing conditions at both schools. And we have good news to share this evening. We also had the environmental hygienist engineer out to the site, and their test results just came back this weekend that both buildings are clean. They found no asbestos at either Farm Hill or Snow in a variety of conditions that they tested. So that's great news. It was a small assumption on our part that the age of the roofs in the buildings probably would be negative, but to get that confirmation is just great news. So we received that this weekend. And of course, we will keep their test results and we'll share them with Peter, of course. And what we do is we build those tests reports into our future specifications for bidding, so the contractors, bidders can see that the roofs were tested and the results. So there's no question about that. So we have, like I said, we have started our roof plans on a very schematic level at this point. We are working toward construction documents as we speak. So the next week or so, we're going to be really hitting those and getting those complete. And I guess the process, as we see it usually, is when the project goes to the state with the grant application, we're accepted and we get a state number, which is what we're waiting for typically in this process. Then we put that number on our documents as we complete them, and then we get them to your local officials for their review. That's usually how the process works. And we don't want to make assumptions for the local fire marshal and building official and health department, but we try to get the project reviewed within a few weeks. Usually it's 2-3 weeks. Sometimes it can be a little faster if the officials know that it's coming and they've heard of the projects. And usually we reach out to them with an email or a phone call to just introduce ourselves and let them know that the project is in design and is going through the state reimbursement process, which requires sign off by 4 different officials in town. So we're at the beginning of that. Obviously before we get the state number, we're working on and we'll complete the documents. I guess to give you kind of a quick overview of each of the buildings as we see them, we reviewed both, like I said, both buildings. We were out on site and as well as the environmental. And I think one of the issues that came up when we reviewed Farm Hill, for instance, was in the deep overhangs, there were some melting and refreezing issues, some ice damming issues that an ice melt system was required on that side of the building above the entrance. And we really always look at those things that are not working properly or that could be improved. And the roof replacement, of course, is the opportunity. Not only do we have to bring the roof up to code in terms of insulation or drainage if it's lacking, but also venting. And in this case, I think our findings are that the building, especially in the attic area, is losing enough heat to the roof that it's causing that melting on the roof itself. And what we would propose is to put a vented deck on the roof. So we would strip the roof as part of the project, put a new vented deck on the building that would provide full ventilation under the shingles, and then try to eliminate or manage the heat loss that's causing that melting, runoff, and refreezing and ice damming on the building itself. We find that works on pretty well on most asphalt shingle applications, sloped roof applications like you have at Farm Hill. So that would be one suggestion, is to do this vented type of deck. So it would require the vents, as you know, in the soffit area, but also new vents in the ridge areas as well to get that flow of air under the roof shingles, while adding that insulation between this and the building itself to minimize that heat loss and that melting. And I guess the second item for the Farm Hill roof that we discovered is, we know that the gutter system on that building is close to a residential type gutter. It's an OG gutter that's on the small side for the size of roof that we have there. So we had talked about making the gutter system a little bit larger. We wouldn't replace necessarily the downspouts or any of the drainage from the gutter down, but as you re-roof, the gutter systems are always examined, and if they're overflowing or they're overwhelmed by heavy storms, then that's obviously the time to upgrade and make sure that those gutter systems are draining properly. And we did see, of course, in the hips, you can always see the debris that gathers at those hips that sometimes causes those backups or those overflow conditions. So we want to address those by making a little more generous gutter that can take those heavy flows of rain. So that would be another thing we would change slightly on the building to increase the drainage. I don't know if anyone has a question before I move on about Farm Hill.
I do, Madam Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. Just one point I just want to have clarified. as I know, the developers, or I should say, or the contractors involved here, Middletown is unique in the fact that it has 3 fire districts. And therefore each district has its own fire marshals and so forth. Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Marco knows more definitively. I believe Farm Hill is in the South Fire. Am I not correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay. And Snow School is in the City or Central Fire District.
That's correct.
Okay. So I just want, when you're reaching out, I just want, if you're sending it just to one department, in this case, you clearly have to reach out to 2 different departments and chiefs and so forth there. The specific questions. So in the packet of material that was sent out to us regarding the replacement, there's this cost analysis that you've done.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask if the suggestions that you made regarding venting and gutter modifications, or to include in the, I guess when we go out to bid, they're required the bidders to respond to. Are those elements included in this initial analysis?
Correct. They are. We knew that we always deal with venting, especially with the
Sure.
asphalt shingle roofs. So we did build that, and we put a conservative number in that early estimate before we really tackled any of the design issues. So yes, that builds in some of the decking and the venting that we're talking about.
Okay, and the gutter work as well.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions specific to Farm Hill? Seeing none, I'll move on to Snow School roof. And the Snow School is a little bit, well, it's a little more complex, obviously, because we have currently, there are 3 different roofing types on the building. We've got the asphalt shingles, as you know, on the shed roofs that are the front, on the back, and also on the main access for the entry. We have most of the flat roofs are an old built-up type modified bituminous roofing with a pea gravel that is existing. And then we also have the barrel, the older barrel, which is an EPDM or a rubber type roof on the building. So our design, of course, we're going to have a multiple type of membranes or roofing systems. We'll go back with the asphalt shingles, and also on the flat roof, we can, and that's where the decision hasn't been confirmed yet. So we want to talk to you, of course, about the flat roofs of the building, whether we're going to go back with a modified bituminous roof, where those pea gravel roofs are. There's the EPDM or the rubber, as we talked about on the barrel gymnasium roof, the older gymnasium roof. There are a lot of opportunities. Of course, there are a lot of different types of membranes you can use for flat roofs. We design all of them, whether it's a modified bituminous, similar to what you have on the building, the EPDM systems, which we're seeing more and more of, that are they come in 20 and 30-year warranties for the different thicknesses of the membrane itself. And lastly, another type of membrane that we do see is a TPO, a thermoplastic olefin, that is similar to a PVC roof. That's a plasticized roof. We see a little less of those, but we still see them in Connecticut all the time. In your case, if you were to replace in kind, you would probably be seeing the modified bituminous roof, which is usually a 2-ply felt that is put down with either hot asphalt or cold applied asphalt adhesive between layers. And then we could, again, replace in kind the barrel with another EPDM roof, which it currently has. So those would be the options in terms of cost. And we did build these conservatively in our estimate. So really any of these options are on the table in terms of the cost of them. We're looking at the modified bituminous being a little more expensive generally than the EPDM. And then the TPO is somewhere in the middle. So again, we can replace in kind, and that would be an easy decision. Or if there was a change, for instance, if you wanted to go everywhere with EPDM, that could be a decision as well. Um, so I guess that's something to consider as I continue to talk about the roofs. To jump back to the asphalt shingle for a moment, that is a fairly it's a very defined area of the roof, and we know that there have been some failings of the asphalt shingle roofs. We've looked at them, and we believe that, again, venting is probably one of the main issues with those roofs. And again, asphalt shingle roofs fail prematurely when they overheat, and they're not, meaning they're not vented properly. The shingles themselves overheat and they develop stress cracks. And sometimes you'll see them fail altogether that way. And we do see asphalt shingle roofs that leak and that start to come apart prematurely because of overheating. In this case, we would redo the venting system on these shed roofs a little differently, but similar concept to Farm Hill. Make sure that they're vented top and bottom, that they have channels that run through them, that it's a defined uniform system of ventilation for those. One of the things I think we're going to see with snow school is that because of the failure of some of these asphalt shingle roofs, we are going to carry a little bit of an additional plywood replacement or deck replacement cost. Usually when roofs fail like that, we'll see more rotted plywood or more rotted decking underneath. And we always carry a safety of usually 5%, about 5% of the roof deck as an allowance in the project, just in case as they strip the roof, you find areas that are rotted or deteriorated. In this case, because we know there are areas that have failed, we want to build in a little bit more, but we'll probably build in a 10% allowance for that. And again, the allowance is good because you won't spend the money unless you need to. It's an allowance that the contractors carry in their bids, and if it's not used, it goes back into the project as a credit at the end and goes back to the city. So that would be our recommendation for the asphalt shingle roofs. For the flat roofs, really the decision, sometimes it's an owner preference what type of membrane you use, and we'll be glad to talk over if there are pros and cons and as you see it. I guess one thing I could say is in our original proposal for the project, we have a PV analysis by our structural engineer, and that they've been a line item to study the roofs to make sure in the future, should you ever choose photovoltaic system, they will ensure that the structure can handle it in all the different areas that you could use the PV panels. So all of the membrane systems are suitable or adequate for future photovoltaic. And the way we structure these are, the industry really has moved to a high density insulation and cover board that can take the loading, because that's the issue often with PV, is there's a heavy loading for ballasted systems, and we make sure that those are in place. So should you ever choose, you have the opportunity to put new PV on your building. And we'll study it for the existing structure that's there now, and we'll also incorporate the potential loading of ballasted PV in our structural engineers calculations. I think that I touched all the major portions of this. Of course, I guess to recap on the code issues, of course, we always look at the drainage, make sure you have proper drainage and overflow emergency drainage, which is a code requirement now. So that is part of our design as we move forward. And then, of course, the insulation layers. Those are usually every 20 years or so, they are upgraded, and the energy code requires a thicker insulation than when the building was last re-roofed, or when the renovations and additions happened on snow, for instance. So we will be upgrading the insulation layers to meet current code. Sometimes we have to redo flashings around the building. Of course, that's part of the roof construction. If anyone has any questions about snow roof, please jump in.
Madam Chair,
Yep, go ahead, Councilman
Thank-
Fredo.
thank you. I was pleased to hear, because you didn't mention it initially, that pleased to hear that in terms of your part of your responsibility would be to do some analysis for potential photovoltaic for solar panels and things of that nature in some point in the future. How will that be? You know, and then there's this other analysis of actually replacing the roof. I believe that's the documents that the committee has received. So is this just explained in terms of, you know, after you complete, so we're not going to go out to bid at this time. We're going to go to bid regarding roof replacement. And then in addition, we will have this analysis or information provided for each roof that will be that the committee will receive and the school system will receive and the community will receive, that if we wanted at some point in the future to actually install. So I just want to confirm how is that going to actually be transmitted and documented, and when would the committee receive such appropriate documentation? So the scope of your work, this is part of it, and it would be when it's, so I wonder if you could just address that.
Sure, absolutely. This analysis, and it's mostly a structural type of analysis to make sure your roofs are structured for this, is really concurrent with the roof design. The roof design and this analysis are somewhat separate in a way,
Right.
but they both march on at the same time. So we have our structural engineer on board. They've started looking at the plans that we've received, and they're hoping, actually, they just sent me an email today saying, hey, can we get a little more information for certain things? But we're going to be working with them to go over the different roofs on the building, because of course, when you talk about the building, it's snow, for instance, there's, you know, several different
Right.
types of roofs,
Sure.
slope and flat roofs. So the product, well, at the end, we're going to have a summary by the structural engineer that'll list the different roof areas, similar to the diagram that we prepared for the state grant application, where we have a diagram of the building with all the different roofs identified, and they will go through and basically note, okay, these roofs are structured for this many pounds per square foot. So yes, they are adequate for not only the PV, but that's also taking into account all code references to snow loading as well, because there's the code has also been upgraded for snow drift loading, and snow is a perfect candidate because there are higher and lower roofs that create these snow drifts on the roof, and that's exactly why the code was upgraded, because you'll get a 3 or 4 or 5 foot drift on your roof in the middle of January in a snowstorm. They have to take that into account in addition to any loading that a PV system would exert on the roof. So you will get that information probably around the same time, if not sooner, than the actual finished roof design. And then that is something that you can, you know, that information that you can choose to act on down the road, or however you see fit. Certainly what I can tell you is that the state, in the past, the state didn't get involved with PV, but you may know now that the state in the last 2 years, it's been about 2 years, that they've gotten into the PV business, and they are reimbursing all districts for purchased systems. So you have to design it and come up with it, and then bid it and actually be prepared to purchase the system. And the paybacks have been pretty good. With the state reimbursement, it really does cut the payback period, sometimes within 5 or 7 years, for these systems that really are rated for around a 20-year period.
Madam Chair, if I can jump in.
Sure, go ahead.
Paul, I think actually, in addition to the structural analysis, there was to be an efficacy study to include a solar pathfinder type of study to determine if PV would be feasible from a financial perspective.
Okay.
Are you of that mind? I'm pretty sure that was in the RFP.
And if it was, then we will.
Okay.
I don't have, because the structural always comes first. Sometimes they'll identify roofs that we can't, that just won't support the PV.
Right,
Then
exactly.
we feed that information to the electrical engineering group, and they come up with a feasibility of what the roof can support in terms of how many panels and what kind of kilowatt you can actually produce on your roof. And then it's like you said, Peter, it's more of a generic calculation based on the kilowatts you produce and the estimated cost of that system, and then we can give you a payback of how many years that is. And of course, with state reimbursement, like I said, it usually, well, your reimbursement rate is 66%, so that's the state
Real
pays
money.
most of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will check that, Peter, just to be sure, but you're right. I recall the RFP having
Right.
the PV discussion. And of course, we're starting with the structural, and that's where we usually start.
One step after the other. Perfect.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Paul, this is John Giuliano. I'm the building superintendent at Snow School, and I took your team all throughout a bunch of areas I had of concern. And one of the things that I asked for was some access ladders to be installed on the roof so that we would be able to access different levels instead of having to take out extension ladders, what have you. Was that factored into this as well, or is that something that will be addressed during the design phase, or both?
That's a great question. And I'm sorry, I failed to mention that. With most roof replacement projects, we do always look at roof access. And right now, of course, you have one hatch on snow that you can get to many of the roofs of the building. But what we end up doing most often is we usually add ladders, if not directly onto the roof, interior ladders and hatches directly onto the roofs in different sections that you may need them. But we'll also add smaller ladders, miniature, almost 2 or 3 rungs that will go from one roof to another. And usually what we find is that many roofs these days don't have easy access for maintenance workers or others to get from one roof to another. So we do add ladders, and what we'll do in this case, John, is we will confirm those new ladder locations with you as the design develops, just to make sure that you're satisfied that, okay, we're getting to every roof that you that we need to get to ultimately.
The only thing I would, John, the only thing I would add is we don't want to be so accommodating that our guests on the evening and the weekends find it easy to camp out up on our roofs also.
I agree. I did ask for one ladder mounted on the exterior of the calf, but to have the swing cover over it or whatever, but if that's not an option, at least.
No. We just want to be sure we don't make it too convenient.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe we can have it electrified and then I just have a shut off.
Yeah, with the PV.
That's right. We'll hook it right up.
Even better, no cost.
Does anybody else have any questions for Paul?
Madam Chair, I just had one follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. As you presented information on Snow School in particular, you mentioned different options for covering that might be applied. And so my question has to deal with when we go out to bid, will we include option A, B, and C, or how will that be handled in terms of how you would, or what would be your recommendation?
Well, typically what we end up doing is we make the membrane decision during design. So ideally we want to know what that is, because all our detailing, when we do the construction documents, when we complete that detailing, has to be membrane specific. So we'll want that information to work with you on making sure that we have the membrane that whether it's just a straight replacement of what's out there, or if you want to change things up a little bit, or there may be a reason to. We haven't really seen that. I mean, looking at the roof, it seems intuitive that it could be replaced certainly right as it is with the existing membranes replaced, the systems you're currently using. The only difference would be that nowadays you won't see pea gravel, any ballast, roof ballast on a roof. It's stone is not allowed on roofs any longer by code. Whether it's sometimes you go onto roofs with big river rock on it to hold the membrane down, or in your case, you have the little pea gravel on it. Neither of those is allowed by code anymore, because in high wind situations, in really bad storms, they can become loose and leave your roof and become projectiles almost on site, which the code had recognized and doesn't allow any longer. The modified bituminous roof that we would replace that with would be a fully adhered system that wouldn't require anything on top of it. And it has a built-in granule that protects it from UV and helps the felts age better. Their better weatherability. So I guess the bottom line is we would want to choose the membrane going forward in the next few weeks at a minimum. And then the one question we typically get into is the warranty itself. The state reimburses for a 20-year warranty. That is their standard. Many owners like to build in a bid alternate for a 30-year warranty. And in that case, we would, and that's a standard for most owners want to see that price difference. And then they can make the decision whether we can either afford it, or because the state won't reimburse that difference between the 20 and the 30 year. But many owners jump at it because the cost really is not that great to go from one to the other. Really, it's not exponential. It's a very small incremental cost that gives you a little more peace of mind and a roof that's built a little more durably for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, I don't see anything. Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you being here. All right, so Chris Bourne, are you still with us? Awesome. So we had jumped over financing, so we'll circle back to that if that's all right, if you can bring everybody up to speed on the financing.
Thank you, Madam Chair, appreciate that. So can you hear me well? I'm actually driving on a back road.
Yeah, no, we can hear you. We're good so far.
Okay, so with the pricing that came through on the two quotes that Paul just discussed with you, there's a requirement for us to put aside 34% as well as the ineligible costs, and then an additional amount contingency. Back when we looked at the roofs in the beginning, we thought $650,000 would cover that. Due to things happening because of COVID, we had some funding left over from salaries because we couldn't fill paraprofessional positions, and we had some savings in transportation costs. The Board of Ed was able to put $650,000 aside. After getting these two quotes, we realized that amount just covered snow school. So we started to move forward with that, but had a conversation with the mayor and Carl Erlacher, who generously offered to do what the council people did last night and provide $250,000 in funding for a potential bond that might be done. We were able to come up at the board side with an additional $250,000. So the board is putting aside $900,000 to cover the cost of the 34% and the ineligibles. There's also some extra room for things that might pop up that we did not expect. The city's $250,000 portion is only for unexpected costs. So their money will be used last, and that was the agreement that we came up with the mayor and Carl Erlacher, and it is what the Common Council voted on last night. So I wanted the committee, my apologies for this sort of going the cart before the horse, but we have a May 10th deadline to file our application, or we have to wait till June 10th. And if we wait till June 10th, Peter Stay can attest to the fact that we do not have the time needed to hire the contractors to get the work done and get the kids back into school. We're already running on a tight timeline. So we had to get the funding in place for you to make your decision tonight on whether or not you're going to move forward with the costs as you see it, the presentation that Paul gave you, the estimates that you have before you, and allow us to move forward with the applications, which we'll file on Friday with your permission. Does anybody have any questions on the funding piece?
I do have a few. Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead, Councilman Lafredo, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want, so the action taken by my colleagues and I at last night's meeting was $250,000 of potential bonding money that, if needed, would be, as the bond ordinance was presented, it just addressed, if I stand to be corrected, was Farm Hill School for that money. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, so what we decided was we would pay in full Snow School, and then the money set aside for Farm Hill would come from that 900,000. We expect that the $900,000 will cover if we don't come into any major problems. And then the 250 would only come into play if we needed additional funding due to unforeseen costs.
The reason I'm raising that, though, is that, as I understand what we passed, that 250 could only be applied to Farm Hill School, because that's how the bond read. Okay, we're all on the same page on that then. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, and this is just a question in terms of to move this forward, you want the committee to take up some action items, I assume, to vote on a couple of things, or maybe one thing comprehensively. And I just wanted to ask, did we need to, before we did that, based on the presentation made by Paul, do we need to come to a decision regarding the type of covering? Because that'll take an effect of, do we need to address that this evening, I guess, is my question, if we're going to move forward so you could get these estimates into the process and for the proposal to go forward to the state. We need to act on that this evening.
So I think, Councilman Lafredo, I think that that's a question for Peter Stay, who may be more familiar with the process of applying for the project. We are presenting all of the options that Paul presented along with our application, and certainly the state will then review the documentation that we bring. And I don't know how the process works from there, so I think Peter would be able to answer that.
Committee members. So Middletown has all of the roofs that Paul described, all of the membranes. And my experience with those is, generally speaking, my preference, if I were asked, would be the EPDM, or the rubber roofing. It's popular, it's readily available, it's a proven technology. You can get extended warranties from reputable companies that more than likely will be around for a long time. It's that's my personal preference. What I could do, if it would please the committee, is I could ask Silver Petrocelli to give us the pros and cons that we could decide at the next meeting, and if that would help. But that's my personal experience. And I can also offer that Woodrow Wilson Middle School is being roofed with an EPDM roof. And as Paul mentioned, the building committee did go to the 30-year warranty. And if I remember correctly, on something in excess of $1 million roofing project, the difference was $9,000 or something to that effect. It was profoundly inexpensive because all of the additional cost is material. and it's material in the membrane, nothing else. So there you go. That's what I can offer.
And Councilman LaFredo, after talking to the gentleman from the state, I think certainly that their input in what they see with what Silver Petrocelli submits, there will be some input from the state on what they do and don't approve.
Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions for Chris Bourne on financing or any other topics?
Madam Chair, I have a question for.
Sure, go ahead,
Mr.
Ben.
Snavy. Peter, which schools have the EPDM? Which current schools?
So Woodrow currently has EPDM. Moody has modified bitumen. The high school has a TPO, thermoplastic olefin. Lawrence has sections of EPDM, but mostly shingle. Snow School, as we've heard, is a mishmash of everything invented by man. Wesley School on the flat roofs has EPDM. All the rest are shingle. Farm Hill is shingle. Spencer is EPDM. McDonough is EPDM. Adult Ed is a mishmash. And 372 Hunting Hill and 311 are EPDM. I think that's all of them.
Thank you.
If I could offer just one observation, is that EPDM is a great choice, and unless you are looking for a white roof. If you, in some districts, they prefer, some districts go with the black roofs, and some prefer the white roofs because they're concerned about their air conditioning costs. And of course, a white membrane will reflect better and it will keep your building a little cooler in the hot weather. If you're not as concerned about that because the school is out for the summer and the building isn't used as intensively in the summer, then a black roof, in Connecticut, districts will go either direction. If you go north of here into Massachusetts and Vermont and New Hampshire, you're going to see mostly black roofs because of their heating loads. If you go south of here to New Jersey or mid-Atlantic, white roofs are much more common. So Connecticut's right in the middle of that, that break line between white and black membranes. EPDM used to have a white membrane and the manufacturers have taken it off the market because it was not, it wasn't wearing properly. The formulation for the white EPDM was not good and they were having difficulty keeping up their warranties. So if you want a black membrane, EPDM is a good choice. If you want a white membrane, I would either go with modified bituminous or TPO, which both of them make a very light membrane.
If I may, Paul, isn't there some debate that the temperature of, the amount of heat that the white roof will actually reflect is subject to some debate because inevitably it becomes an ambient temperature to the product anyway?
True. There's nothing, it's not, well, there's always a debate in roofing and I think that there's some scientific rationale clearly behind reflectivity off of a roof, but at the same time, that's not the end all of the discussion. Certainly, roofs can be either, and your reflectivity of a white roof will help potentially, but it's not guaranteed.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I know there's a timeline that we're involved with, so I would suggest if there's not other questions, if somebody could outline, they're asking for in the item 5 of our agenda, the approval of the application to the state. If that could be given some, I don't have an understanding of what exactly is contained in such application, and hopefully that can be provided at this time. That would be.
Chris, is item 5 just meant for us to approve passing that along to the state, or are we meant to actually see the application? Because I didn't see it in the materials. I think that's what Councilman Lafredo's asking.
We do not have the completed application yet.
Okay.
What you are approving is for us to put forth the proposals that Silver Petrocelli and the financial package. The other piece that's going to go to the state is the minutes from the meetings that have approved all of these processes, including this meeting tonight. So we need to submit the meetings. The board approved the funding, the board, the Common Council approval of the funding, and then your approval to move this forward to the next step for a formal application.
Okay.
With these documents that Silver Petrocelli has provided.
Madam Chair?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes, I raised it earlier, Chris, you weren't on the call initially, but we did have a meeting on April 6th, conducted the interviews, which brought about the hiring of Silver Petrocelli. Those minutes, I assume, would need to be included in the application, correct?
I don't think that they need to be in the application per se. And my apologies for not getting those typed up in the pulling together of this quick meeting. If you want to make mention on these minutes that Silver Petrocelli was the approved person, I think that that will suffice.
Okay, all right. Yep, because you're going to include the minutes of this evening's meeting.
Yes, I am.
You are, okay, so, right. So, I mean, I have no problem. I mean, for the record, I just know that they're going to want to know how did we end up finally picking who we picked, but so forth. So, I guess, so the minutes would, this evening's minutes, this afternoon's minutes would so reflect that. We've discussed it and it will be included in the minutes, correct?
Yes, I will do that.
Action, okay, all right. So just so I know what I'm asking to be voted, to vote on based on Councilwoman Carter's statement, so we're not going to be approving the full application, or I guess, so what are you're looking for us to approve? What elements of the application before us this
So
evening?
I'm looking for a motion from the committee to approve the submission of an application for Farm Hill School and Snow Elementary School roof replacement as provided in the quotes from Silver Petrocelli and the financial support from the city of Middletown.
Madam Chair, I would so make that motion as so I so move that we act in the manner as just suggested by staff member Christine Bourne.
I second that, Councilman Gennaro.
Thank you both. Any further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the application to the state, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so that is approved. Thank you, Chris, for jumping in on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. But are you going to set
Yes,
future meetings?
we are
Awesome.
going to move to our last item, which is to set a regular meeting schedule. So I don't know if this conflicts for anybody. Marco, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. I
No,
just
no.
want to confirm, I was trying to write down, I'm sure Cody got it. But Mr. Gennaro, did you second the motion?
Yes, he did.
Yes, sir, I did.
Thank you. I can't write that fast. Thanks.
That's okay. No worries. All right, so yeah, we need a regular meeting schedule. I don't know if, this is I think the first Tuesday. If anybody, I mean, this is fine for me personally, but I'm open to really any other days. If anybody has anything else, any conflicts, we can talk about any other days.
Councilwoman Carter, one thing I would suggest is if you do choose this day, so that you're not stuck with the hour, I think the meeting at 6:30 is a constant. And we would have a streaming issue is what the 6:30 deadline is for. We can't stream two meetings at once. So it either has to start at 5 or it has to be the second or third Tuesday.
Okay. I think,
Fridays actually work better for me. Tuesdays are pegged up for negotiations for the next 3 months. And only the Board of Ed meetings on Tuesdays are scheduled.
okay, sorry. What works better for you, Chris? Wednesdays?
No, Wednesdays are actually bad. That's baseball, but Fridays.
Baseball.
Well, I coach two teams.
Yeah,
it's not like
fine.
I'm watching the Yankees.
Yeah.
I was gonna come watch you play, but that's
You want to be watching for long.
no.
Man, I'm just pulling on my calendar now. It's jam packed.
Yeah. So I think the 5 o'clock hour is a little challenging for me. But any other Tuesdays really also work. Doesn't have to be the first Tuesday. I know we have the streaming issue, but second or third also work.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Do we have to do it at night? Could we do this during the day or the afternoon?
I personally work all day. I don't have any time to do it during the workday hours, but I mean, I'm not the only member of the committee, so
I'm in the same boat as you, Megan. So
okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
How about if we make a suggestion that the first Tuesday we do from 5:30 to 6:30 and just ensure that the schedule is quick, and maybe do the third Tuesday as a potential second meeting, which could just be an alternate meeting, and we can make sure that we cancel them publicly if we don't need them, so that we have two short meetings for just an hour.
Right.
That works for me. And everybody go with that?
yeah,
I can make that work.
Good.
So it'd be the
All
first and the third Tuesday, Madam Chair. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so we're looking at our next meeting Tuesday, June 1st at 5:30 to 6:30.
Which will actually be perfect because we should hear from the state and be able to move forward at that point.
Christine
All right.
or Cody, how quickly can we get invites out for these so I can because I know sometimes these things happen very quickly. The sooner I can lock it into my calendar, the better.
We could do that tomorrow. We can get that out to you.
Perfect.
Do we have to take formal vote on this at this time, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would so move as the recommended dates for the first and third Tuesday.
Second.
As our 5:30.
Excellent. Seconded by Mr. Sugar. Any discussion? No. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? Obviously no. Okay, excellent. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Move we
Thank you,
adjourn.
everyone.
Madam Chair. We adjourn.
Do we have a second on the motion? to
Adjourn.
adjourn?
I'll second it. Everybody second.
Tony, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you
welcome.
being here.
Thank you.
Okay.